I'll never go back down. Hand over my heart. I do this for my town. I do this for my crowd. So turn me up real loud. My time, my time. None of you people can tell me to stop. Yeah. I'm ready to play now. Put me in the game now. I came here to prove it. I'm ready to do it. I can't be afraid now. Put me on the stage now. I'm ready to rage now. I feel like an animal stuck in a cage and I'm ready to break out. My time, my time. None of you people can tell me to stop. This time, like the last time, you better get ready to race to the top. I'm ready to do this. Show you what the truth is. I step on the field. It's time to get real. I'm feeling so ruthless. My time, my time. None of you people can tell me to stop. Lower the lights down. Hand over my crown. Hand over my heart. I do this for my town. I do this for my crowd.
This is fantastic. This is GT racing right now.
He's got traction, he's got everything outside of both of them! Maloney!
Oh, he's taking Anderson! Anderson's up to
Oh my god! Big crash! Oh my goodness, half the field's gonna get rolled!
It's very close. These guys are want to make their way through the field very quickly.
Oh, there we go! Oh no!
That's massive! This is it! This is over! I can't believe this! Oh my god!
God, what?
Sometimes you just got to lick the stamp and send it.
I don't know what happened on there. I just plucked her in first, gave some gen. Oh, fuck yeah. Sorry.
You are racing with other people. And if you no longer go for a test that exists, you're no longer a racing driver.
We go green for 40 minutes of racing around Monza.
Brilliant. Look at defense by Ethan Rigault, just getting so punchy.
And a brilliant getaway already from Josh Rogers.
Two pro drivers going at it here between Dylan O'Keefe and Nick Foster.
Stanaway's demoted to third. Webster wins week 9 here at Sebring through the final corner. That's a huge slide for Cooper Murray. Just trying to barge their way through, and that's whoa. That's a merry-go-round for Nick Burkett. Campbell, Paolo Gaon, and Ferraris behind. Glenn Wood actually was flipped into the barriers. One of the most exciting pirouettes I've seen in quite some time. That's Van Gisbergen, and his day is done. Tell you what, if Calvin wins this race, I wouldn't be surprised. He's all four wheels up the racetrack. Wow, but he just saves it on the apex.
Contact almost made, side by side through the elevation change, and Scotty McLaughlin had the move done, but he got over the crest. And
What a send!
Dylan O'Keefe sends it up the inside, can't do anything with it.
Shane Van Gisbergen already on the attack.
It begins and sending has begun.
And it's going to be a drag race to the line. Tuesday night is rapidly becoming a night to lick the stamp. Send it.
Oh, I forgot I was helping commentate here. I was just sitting back in my jocks and
who I always loved watching because he always made really exciting overtaking manoeuvres. And he raced for the Sauber Formula One team for would have been 2009, or it was actually a couple of races with Toyota at the end of 2009, and then shifted to the Sauber team after that and provided plenty of entertainment. And yes, in 2012, he picked up his one and only Formula One podium finish at the Suzuka circuit.
Fair enough. I tuned out again, but you know.
Doesn't matter. Anyway, I do agree with you. This is a track that will suit these GT3 cars. Obviously, like I said, different cars are going to have different strengths and weaknesses in different parts of the circuit. But the good thing about the Suzuka track is there's a big variety of different terrain. So we've got some long straights, we've got some fast sweeping corners, we've got some direction changes up through the snake where the aerodynamics of the cars will come into play. We've got some slower corners, particularly the hairpin as well. So the different types of cars are going to have different pros and cons in different parts of the racetrack, which means we should get some really, really interesting racing tonight.
Indeed we should, and we've got just a few minutes left here in practice before we go racing for 40 minutes, back to the usual format. So expecting a random safety car at some point in this evening's proceedings, and some pretty decent drivers come to join us today, like James Golding, Jason Bargwanna's son, Ben Bargwanna, Jaden Ransley, back in here as well. Of course, Jackson Susan Harlow, who's forever flying the sim racing flag at the front of this Oscar Piastri, amongst some other drivers out there as well. So it should be a cracking race with a good field here, and should actually be a pretty close field here based on qualifying.
Well, it was Jackson Susan Harlow and Oscar Piastri who shared the race wins last week. In terms of the championship standings, it's Jackson Susan Harlow who carries a commanding points advantage into this round. In fact, he's now more than 2 races ahead of his nearest rival, Job Stewart. Like you said, we've got Ben Bargwanna running in a Mercedes AMG GT3 in the field tonight as well. He's been one of the steady improvers in the just ascendant scene, getting closer and closer to the front of the field with every race that he competes in.
Hey, so what do you reckon about your microphone, Lockie?
I'm liking it. It sounds good.
It's about 6 months overdue. But here
you're not popping and crackling for a start, and it also sounds like you're not talking underwater anymore.
It's a good change.
Big step up.
Well, interested to hear it back on the broadcast later. We got 5 seconds left in practice now, and we'll get ourselves on the grid here in Suzuka. Should be a rolling start, I would imagine, as is a norm for GT races on iRacing, but I digress, and we'll wait till we actually see where they line up on the circuit. If it is a rolling start, they should be lining up just before 130R down there across the top of the bridge as it ticks over, and we can take a look at the starting grid now, and this is how they line up. Cooper Webster on the pole, Jackson Susan Harlow alongside him, Oscar Piastri and Blake Purdy on road 2, Ross Rizzo, Jordan Caruso from 5th and 6th, Brenton Hobson and James Scott on the 4th row of the grid, Job Stewart, Gary Hamilton, your top 10, and it is a rolling start.
High quality drivers there in the top 10. Cooper Webster getting his 6th just-centered pole position. Mitchell McLeod out of 11th on the grid ahead of Emerson Harvey. Back then to Paul Rogers, Steve Jansen, James Golding and Dylan Shepherd in positions 15 and 16. Jaden Ransley, who's doing really well in the ARG Esports Cup at the moment, in position 17 ahead of Matt Lupino. Josh Perween and then Dylan Golson. Good to see Dylan Golson making his first appearance in the Just Send Series, the Toyota 86 Series competitor. He'll start out of grid position 20.
Jeff Cottle and Cameron Dent share the 11th row of the grid ahead of Tyler Howard and Reese Cohen. Kobe Williams and Troy Maguire on row 13, Ryan Wood and Aaron Shields. 27th and 28th, your top 30 rounded out by James Kutcher and Aaron Ivers. You'll see the rest of the grid scroll by on your screen as the drivers get themselves underway now behind that pace car. A pretty short run before we get ourselves underway, starting pretty much into the last sector of the lap here. Pace car will dive away out of this final chicane, and we'll get ourselves a good race. Track temp is pretty hot as well. It's 44 degrees out there on the track, so they might be fighting for a little bit of grip today. and that might aid a couple spins through some of the high-speed sections on the racetrack then. As we look to our pole sitter, Cooper Webster, get us underway here at Suzuka. For Just Send It, we go green, and that's a great start for Webster and for Harlow. Look at Piastri and Scott Purdy door-to-door as they run down the main straight, and now bump drafted for second place. Very tight, more contact for third.
Side by side, Oscar Piastri and Blake Purdy not wanting to give an inch, and it's Jackson Suzel and Harlow who gets turned around out of second position. It was contact there from behind from Blake Purdy, and Jackson Suzel and Harlow's been muscled out high and wide off the racetrack, and he's going to lose a bunch of spots.
That's a big shame for him, and he's going to have to fight his way back through the field, which is something he finds himself doing pretty more often than he'd want. There's more contact as well, as Brendan Hobson edges off the track.
And Emerson Harvey in the fence. He had his own off-track excursion, and then as he came back onto the track, he had door-to-door contact with the McLaren, and that saw him getting sent off the racetrack and into the wall. So we look a bit further down the order. Job Stewart, the most capped driver in the Just Send It competition, making a rather aggressive manoeuvre down the inside of one of the McLarens. But as we're accustomed to in Just Send It, drivers on the attack in the early stages of this race, looking to make every passing opportunity work.
Indeed, and that hairpin's going to be pretty interesting as well today, as drivers Constantine are up into that corner, try to get through it, and then into the long sweeping corners that follow up the racetrack. James Golding under a bit of pressure here from Dylan Shepherd for one of the places on the racetrack as it heads down towards 130R, a corner where you do not want to go side by side, Lockie, but in Just Send It, I do wonder if they'll try it and just run themselves all the way off the outside of the racetrack.
Yeah, with the aero on these cars, it's pretty much flat out. But then after you come around 130R, you have a big stop into the final chicane as well. So it's pretty much just after you get the car straightened up, after holding your breath through 130R, you are hard on the brakes. But after lap number one, it's Cooper Webster, driver with the most race victories in the Just Send It series, who has a 1.7 second advantage over Oscar Piastri. And Jackson Suzel and Harlow in the pits already, so obviously sustained some damage on the opening lap, and he is in for an early pit stop.
Might work out in his favour though, because it means he's not going to have to stop again. Won't be caught out by an early safety car here, should it be early on in the race that we get it. So keep your eye on him as we get later on in this event. He might pop back up later on. A move from Jaden Ramsey for 13th place up the inside of Josh Perween, up the top of the S's, and makes it stick pretty well. That was just for Stevie Anderson. So Ramsey up, trying to move his way up the order. Now he races, of course, in Toyota 86 across Australia and New Zealand.
So thinking about strategy, we know that everybody's going to have to make a pit stop at some stage during this race, but do we think that drivers will change tyres during that pit stop? Because we know that in these GT3 cars, you can't do tyres and fuel at the same time, and it does add quite a significant amount of time to the duration of the pit stop if you do choose to take tyres, as unfortunately Scott Fontaine has gone for an off-track excursion.
That's not a surprise. No, I don't expect to see any tyres being taken. 40 minutes is about the length of most of the sprint GT racing we've seen official races here on iRacing, and you don't take tyres in those because these tyres are quite...
Oh! Ross Rizzo, who had spun, just gets collected up the front by an approaching pack of cars. Dylan Golson was one of the cars that made it through there, but there was another one that had absolutely nowhere to go and slammed straight into the front of Ross Rizzo's Mercedes. So Ross Rizzo, who was running in 5th position, either he's had contact with another car or he's made a mistake on his own. He's ended up facing the wrong way and he has been slammed head on.
This is a big hit, isn't it? Lands on his roof and had to tow back to pit lane, unfortunately. A whole host of cars down in pit lane now. Oscar Piastri's come down with Josh Perween and Jeff Connell as well. Kobe Williams. In fact, Piastri's got damage.
It was a Ferrari that nailed Ross Rizzo's BMW and sent him absolutely flying. Goodness me. So Piastri, you said, with damage as well, and Jordan Caruso, one of the other Evolution Racing Team entries, having a moment. So lots of drivers making mistakes, it has to be said, Ryan, in the early stages of this race.
Hot track, not much of grip. It's kind of greasy out there. The sun's beating down on the circuit, and it's often what we see in these sorts of races, unfortunately. But it also adds a bit of unpredictability to the race, which is what we love, especially in this series. So we'll see how it pans out as pit stops work themselves out later on in the event. Where that safety car falls could very well decide who wins this race, as it seems to do almost every time we go racing, Lockie, because someone always seems to get caught out by it. But up front, it's still a massive margin for Cooper Webster, up and over 4 seconds almost ahead of what's now James Scott in second place.
Oh, Aaron Ivers in the Ferrari. We just saw out the back of Declan Fraser's car there that he got it all wrong out into the grass, and he's off the racetrack now as well. Some of these fast corners, it's a fine line between being able to take them flat out or just having to give the brakes a bit of a dab to slow the car up and get it turned in. And if you do make a mistake, generally it has pretty big consequences at this racetrack. So all of this is working very much to the advantage of Cooper Webster, who leads the race by near enough to 5 seconds over James Scott, the current points leader in the V8 Supercars Online Premier Series.
And down on a pit road there for Paul Rogers out of 12th place, so he'll take his service relatively early on. Is that Ransley ducking in front of Job Stewart? He's trying to fight back, gets a move done, back up the inside at turn 1, a great switch over. That's Matt Lapino, sorry, not Jaden Ramsey that made that move. That was a great exchange for them. There's Jaden Ramsey, he's up the road there in 7th place, he's trying to chase down James Golding for 6th. These guys have both made their way up the order since the start of this one by about 7 or 8 spots, both of them. So both had relatively good opening 7 minutes here.
So Jaden Ransley running the same livery that he ran, the SpongeBob livery. That's the same as what he ran in the Carbon Gaming GT3 A-Series on Sunday night. That's another race that you can catch here on the SimSpeed TV network.
I've got this battle for 4th place. McLeod and Shepard battling away. Mercedes versus McLaren. McLaren, of course, will have the flames shooting out the back as that's a wide line for McLeod. This could give a fantastic run onto this straight for Dylan Shepard. Although McLeod recovered quite well in the end, didn't he? And he should be able to cover off here down into 130R. It's the chicane he's going to have to be careful about. As Shepard shows a nose, tries to put him off. Through 130R, trying to get a good run. Shepard, will he look to the inside? He doesn't. McLeod carrying good speed and momentum down into the final couple corners on the racetrack. And that McLaren behind them is Cameron Dance, who's found himself a lap down already.
The Audi typically generates its lap speed by having really, really good balance through the high-speed corners, but it's not quite as good in a straight line. And you can see there that Dylan Shepard, getting a better exit out of the final corner, is able to pull up alongside Mitchell McLeod and get down the inside heading into turn 1. We've got James Scott in the pits for his pit stop.
And Scott, identifiable by his red highlights on his new Altus Esports livery, of course, joining that team about a week or so ago, as Jordan Caruso's caught in the middle of it here, right behind Joel Chigavazira. I think I got that right, actually.
I think you did. Well done.
Bit of damage there for that Mercedes, isn't there? On the front right. Doesn't seem to be affecting it too much. Chigavazira is struggling, though, as around behind them. Who was that? Lost it through the S's. Poor Aaron Ivers not having a good race, and he has to tow back to pit lane.
Yeah, so damage there, and he'll need to undertake repairs. Now,
that was wild.
The other interesting thing here as well is that with some of the front-running cars completing pit stops, James Scott, the highest place of the cars that has taken a pit stop so far, but he's only just over a second ahead of Jackson Suzlin Harlow. So even though Suzlin Harlow had a fairly fraught start with getting turfed off the racetrack and and spun around in the first corner of the race. He's still not in a bad strategic position here, particularly if the safety car was to come out soon.
Indeed, James Scott being held up now by Nathan Hearn, who is on the same lap as him, but of course hasn't pitted, so at the end of it all is a long way behind him once it all shakes out. But he gets by him there with relative ease as, Mitchell McLeod's gone around on the entry to the chicane, and he gets it going again. How did he end up in that position? Because that's a very late on. Here he is. Here's the replay through 130R, up and onto the AstroTurf, clips the apex on the outside of the corner, and just avoided Cameron Dance's McLaren.
Wow, I held my breath there, and I bet Cameron Dance held his breath as well. One of the things with the Audis too is that they do tend to be quite twitchy, so once the rear end lets go, the driver doesn't get a lot of feedback or reaction time to be able to correct it. This is what it looks like on board with Cameron Dance.
Ooh.
My goodness me, he came within a couple of millimetres of centre punching that stranded Audi R8.
Go from worse to even worse at Dance if that had happened, but as of now he stays a sole lap down. Cooper Webster now occupying 8th place after pitting from your race lead.
Yep, and unsurprisingly, Cooper Webster by far and away the highest place of the drivers that's taken a stop. The good news as well for Cooper Webster is that he's come out with some relatively clean track, so It's not like he's going to be disrupted by having to work his way through traffic.
A spin for Jordan Caruso as well. And tough place. Followed around by James Scott, who slides his way back onto the racetrack. Good save, but that's going to cost him a bucket load of time.
So this is what it looks like from onboard James Scott's car. Through the long, sweeping left-hander. Oh, well, James Scott actually got that wrong all on his own as well, so that was a separate incident. And James Scott, I think, has just managed to stay ahead of Jackson Suzlin-Harlow, his oldest esports teammate after that spin. Jonathan Bykoff, one of our Just Send It regulars, in trouble as well. So
everywhere we look.
Mistakes in this race, Ryan. Yeah, pretty much every 15 or 20 seconds we're talking about another driver who's had a spin or an off-track excursion or a crash.
Such a high speed, so many high speed turns on this track too. With the little amount of practice you do, relatively speaking, for Just Send It compared to some other series, maybe not surprising as well, because they do take a little bit more skill to get right consistently without making those sorts of mistakes. Add in the hot track, and we're seeing a lot of errors out there as Mitchell McLeod comes down a pit road, as well as we continue to watch this battle now on board with Harry Inwood. Lee Harrison, we try to defend the inside line here as Inwood shows a nose, doesn't defend, lets Harlow go. But look out, because coming out of pit lane there is Blake Purdy. He rejoins right in front of JSH. And James Scott is going to be very thankful for Lee Harrison being in between them right now.
Indeed, because the Olsen Esports teammates will be effectively battling for positions, and Blake Purdy's going to be right in that battle as well. Lee Harrison, on the other hand, in the Ferrari, will still get to take his pit stop, so strategically hangs out of phase with the others.
Harry Inwood fighting Harrison here, 2 cars apart. Going to be loving this if he gets held up as Purdy goes for a very opportunistic move. Harley's going to try to be just as opportunistic. Lucky for him, the door gets left open just enough for him to slip through without a scratch on his car, and he follows Blake Purdy then, and that puts your provisional top 3, it should be. Behind Cooper Webster even, so 2nd, 3rd and 4th, all line astern. And it allows Inwood to catch back up to Harrison as well.
So Cooper Webster back up to 4th position and has already taken his pit stop. That had trouble written all over it, and in fact we've got 2 cars off the road, so Lee Harrison spinning out as well as Harry Inwood.
Yeah, Harrison hit the grass and spun, and Inwood's spin was in response to that. Basically, he got himself all light in the rear end as he lifted off. Can he keep it off the fence? No, he can't. He slides along the tyre bundle there, and Jackson Suzlin Harlow caught out for no fault of his own. Nothing he could do about it here. Not a fantastic angle to show us, so you can see the smoke and clips of the grass, and once you hit that grass at that speed, there's no saving it.
He tried, didn't he, Jackson Suzlin Harlow? The good news is that he managed to wipe off most of the speed before he actually impacted the wall there, but it was Blake Purdy who was gone, and Suzlin Harlow trying to take evasive action, but ending up in the grass and in the fence. And that has seen Jackson Suzlin Harlow slip back down to 12th position at this stage.
Yes, just in behind Job Stewart now. Occupies the spot in front of him.
I think Jackson Suzlin Harlow might have been able to get away with that relatively unscathed. I don't think there's actually going to be too much damage to Suzlin Harlow's car, so
yeah,
he hasn't lost too much in the way of positions.
You know what it reminds me of? The way he hit the wall, he sort of glazed along it rather than smash into it. Similar to how Hamilton managed to escape relatively unscathed in Germany in that chaotic wet race. Similarly, after Leclerc crashed and didn't get away unscathed, he was very fortunate in the way he hit that fence.
Riding on board with Declan Fraser, another one of our Toyota 86 contenders. And we've got our safety car coming out now with just under 24 minutes to go. So only 3 cars that hadn't taken their pit stops yet of Matt Lupino, Dylan Golson and James Katia. So they're going to get caught out by this safety car. When we go racing again, it will have a corrected order. So Cooper Webster, first of the cars to have taken a pit stop, ahead of James Scott and Blake Purdy. Just saw Scott Fontaine going for an excursion as well.
That was under safety car too.
He is our boss, so we shouldn't say too many bad things about him, Ryan.
He is a terrible driver.
You've got your resignation letter typed up and ready to hand in, Ryan?
Yep. I'm ready. This is good news for Harlow. It allows him a few laps here in a few minutes to just take a deep breath and hit that reset button, because he's not in a bad spot despite all of the drama he's had today. He's still in 12th place, and he'll be up inside the top 10 once Lupino, Golson and Kutscher make their stops under this caution period. So I think this works out very well for him.
Great, and we know that he's still going to have good pace as well, so he'll have the opportunity to make up some more positions once we go racing once again. Great to have your company here on the SimSpeed TV network. You are watching week number 9, season number 3 of the Just Send It iRacing series. Not sure about you, Ryan, but I've found, and probably particularly since I've fired up the Sim Racing Oz website and started reporting on all of the various sim racing events, there is just so much sim racing at the moment. It's hard to keep track of it all, but really, really fantastically run and professional events. And the other thing that's really impressed me has been the participation level in just about every sim racing event. I mean, it's very unusual to get a sim race that has less than 40 cars.
Yeah, indeed, and iRacing have backed it up, saying they've received more subscribers in the last 2 months, or new subscriptions in the last 2 months, than they've had in an entire year before. So it's been an exponential growth for the iRacing service over the past couple months, and definitely helped out the sim racing scene quite a bit. Speaking of which, Just Send It, expanding its event running capabilities to help out Erebus Motorsport with their new junior esports competition. And what happened at the back of the shot there?
We had a driver crashing into the wall under safety car conditions, and that's Nick Carroll, who previously raced in the Kumo Super 3 series, currently races in the ARG run Australian Trans Am series, as does Nathan Hearn. And just coming back to the point there that you were making about the Erebus competition that's being run, some great prizes up for grabs and a great opportunity for drivers to make the progression from sim racing to real life motorsport. And the prizes that are on offer for the competition, which kicks off later this week, include a go-kart training day with very experienced go-kart competitor David Serra, and also a day at the Norwell Driver Training Centre with Paul Morris and his crew getting some professional tuition up there. So some fantastic prizes that are up for grabs. And Ryan, you and I are both going to be commentating the final race in that Erebus competition, which will take place at midday on Saturday.
Indeed, looking forward to that. It should be a good event. I haven't quite confirmed where we're going to be live streaming to, but I'm sure Just Send It Facebook page will be one of them. So, yeah, stay tuned for more details on that. Wherever you smart ass. Thank you, Lockie, for that observation.
My pleasure.
I think we might have to up the professionalism just a tad for Saturday.
What are you talking about? I'm always completely professional.
I don't know about that. I don't know. Jay certainly isn't behind the scenes. He can't contain himself right now. He's pissing himself laughing.
Just as well we're under safety car conditions at the moment, I think. So, interestingly enough, the cars at the front of the field have not yet taken the opportunity to come into the pits. It'll be interesting to see.
Haven't had an opportunity.
That's true. I was just about to say it'll be interesting to see if they do so when they head past the pit lane entry next time around.
Ooh, that is interesting, actually. Lapino opts to stay out along with Dylan Golson.
So
now,
James Kitsey has come in. Yep.
I don't see any positive to that.
No, because it means they're now going to have to take their pit stops under green flag conditions. What it also means is that they'll prove to be a bit of an obstruction for Cooper Webster and James Scott, Blake Purdy, Dylan Shepherd, Oscar Piastri, and all of the other contenders when the race resumes.
Going to make things a little bit interesting. The unfortunate thing about Suzuka is how long the lap times are. They're 2 minutes long, which is under pace car. The last lap we just completed was a 5-minute 7.1 for Matt Lapino.
Now, what is going on here? There's people ducking and weaving and chopping and changing positions behind the safety car. Job Stewart just slowing down.
Job Stewart was driving up the order to find out how much damage Blake Purdy had to communicate that to him. And he communicated to Purdy that there's not much. Or vice versa. Purdy checking Stewart. But either way, they've sorted out whatever they wanted to sort out, and Stewart slots back online. As long as you get back to where you're supposed to be, you've got quite a bit of leeway to go up and down the order. It's not necessarily an aspect that's entertained by people running leagues, but this is Just Send It, so, you know, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, probably worth clarifying as well that when I talked about the championship points earlier on, that is very much unofficial. There's not actually, it's not actually an official Just Send It championship, but it is a points tally that I keep in the background just to have an idea and an understanding of which drivers have been the most consistent over the course of the competition.
You know what I love about Just Send It? We always talk about how, you know, we don't take it as seriously, or it's a laid-back show and a laid-back race, but despite all of that, and it's called Just Send It, we always seem to get incredible racing out there on the track, especially at the front of the order. It still manages to put on a fantastic event that showcases the talents of some of these drivers. Most notably Harlow and Webster, who continue to shine week in, week out.
No doubt, and what it does measure as well is because we have such a diverse array of different cars and racetracks in this series, it really showcases the drivers who are good at adapting between different types of vehicles. So, you know, this year we've had everything from GT cars to TCR cars, legend cars, supercars, the Pro 2 Light truck at Oran Park as well. I don't think we'll ever forget that race.
12-turn track turned into a 10-turn track, and for some, a 4-turn track. That was interesting.
The likes of Jackson Suzel and Harlow and Cooper Webster have proven themselves to be pretty adept at getting good results in all of those different vehicles. Like, particularly, I think one of the drives of the season was that round at Okayama in the TCR cars where Jackson, Suzel and Harlow ended up on the sub-optimal strategy because he hadn't taken his pit stop when the safety car came out, fell back to 20th position, but still just through raw pace was able to fight his way all the way back to the front of the field.
Hey, here's a thought. Are the pit stops compulsory, or are they forced by a small fuel tank that the organisers set for each car? Because
they're forced by a small fuel tank. So I get what you're saying. You're saying that maybe Matt Lupino and Dylan Golson think that they can get through without stopping.
Under caution for 10 minutes now. Because of how long the lap is and how slow this damn safe... It's doing 64 kilometres.
Well, plenty of chances to save fuel, aren't there, with the safety car trundling around?
I reckon they can.
Yeah, well, there you go. Maybe that's their strategy, to try and get through. The only problem is that they're going to be racing a whole bunch of cars that will be able to be on maximum attack, whereas they're going to be potentially a bit fuel compromised and are going to have to conserve.
Well, I've done a quarter of the race under caution here. So they might even be able to be a lap or two to the good, potentially. We'll see how this pans out. Either way, I don't think we're going to see Lupino or Golson come down to pit road. You can see Lupino work on those tyres, trying to get some more heat back into them. He is not going to relinquish the lead of this race very easily, I don't think. Webster, Scott, Purdy, Shepherd, Piastri, Golding, Hobson, Stewart, Harlow, Perwin, your top 12, all of them, I think, could have a shot of winning this race. And who knows who could come from even further back. Anything usually does happen in Just Send It. And thanks to Melbourne Performance Centre, Erebus Motorsport, Checkered Flag Media, and Modem Stimulation. We're going to see just who can get it done here at Suzuka as we go back to the green flag. Fantastic restart for your top three. Look at Scott trying to cover off from Purdy, who pulls to his outside now. Down into turn number one. Can he sweep around the outside of the double apex right-hander that starts the lap? Scott struggling for grip on the inside. They almost rubbed paint. Purdy's still got a slight overlap, and there's contact. And Scott spins out into the grass and out into the fence.
He got a very slow restart, James Scott, and that was why Blake Purdy pulled up alongside him on the outside. We see another car going rotating off the circuit in the background as well. And it looked almost there like potentially a bit of a net code issue as well, because according to our vision, there wasn't actually direct contact between two cars, but the outcome is still the same, and that is that James Scott has been bundled off the racetrack. And Dylan Golson on his roof as well. So that's the car that was running in second position. So, big question here. Has he done this on his own, or did he get assistance from somebody else? He had two folks to ride on his tail. No, he's lost the rear end of the Mercedes all on his own. He's in the fence, he's on his roof, and his day is done.
Big old tank slapper through that left-hander did not work out well for him. A replay of the restart. This is Paul Rogers, who restarted just outside the top 10 in his BMW. What did he... Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, that's bad luck. He's clipped the grass on the right and spun it into pit lane. And he's probably to do about a 9-point turn to get it pointed the right direction there. So Lupino's got just over a 3/4 second margin. Back to Cooper Webster and Blake Purdy in third. Oscar Piastri up into fourth. Shepherd, your top 5.
Matt Lupino doing a good job here as Oscar Piastri has a very, very wide moment but manages to rescue the Audi. That was a great save from Oscar Piastri, because not only did he manage to get it back onto the track without losing any positions, he didn't actually give up that much time to Blake Purdy. We are hearing from race control that the predicted race distance from this point is 7 laps, but now Oscar Piastri is going to have to cover to the inside, but he's not able to cover quickly enough because Dylan Shepherd gets the overlap, gets down the inside into turn 1.
And look behind them, Jackson, Suits and Harlow's heaping the pressure on the back of James Golding at the moment. As they run the way up through the S's, there's no opportunity to overtake here, or it's there, as Harlow lurks very close to that back bumper. He has got so much more car pace at the moment, certainly through this section. The Audi working well for him at the moment, and as they sort of hold each other up a little bit, Josh Perwin starting to close in on them as well. Really closing in on them. It's a Golding acting as a cork in the bottle at the moment for these two drivers behind. Despite that little bit of a tweak to the rear wing, Harlow exhibiting heaps of pace. Tried to have a look down at the hairpin, but Golding was supreme on the brakes and Harlow couldn't quite get his car up there. Gotta say, I'm impressed with Lupino. He's holding the zone out at the front of the field, isn't he, as we see a replay here.
He's doing a really, really good job at the moment.
Slight contact between the quarter panels and into the fence. Oh, he reflected and he goes for a wild tumble. Up and over about half a dozen times. Staying with the replay, there was another incident. This is Tyler Howard. There's smoke. He's gone for a spin just behind. Someone else followed him. All happening down the order.
Matt Lupino's previous best race result in just entered as position number 6, so if he can hold on here at the front of the field, he's well and truly on target to eclipse his best race result as Cooper Webster, trying to maximise the exit speed from that final corner, runs very, very wide. He almost drops wheels off the racetrack. I wonder if that's just maybe getting caught up in the turbulent air behind Matt Lupino's car, costing him a bit of downforce and causing his car to understeer a bit.
Potentially had a bit of a tank slapper going on as he had a bit of oversteer, had to correct it. Ended up with some understeer as well. Top three are relatively close here, 1.2 seconds between them. Blake Purdy getting pulled along now by a double slipstream. Lupino's going to defend for his life to hold on to this race win.
The advantage that he will have, though, is that the Mercedes is strong in the areas where you want it to be strong to be able to defend. We know that the Mercedes, compared to the Audi, is a bit down when it comes to corner speed, but it's up when it comes to straight line speed. And so what that will do is it will make it hard for Cooper Webster to get close enough on the straights to be in a position to send it down the inside heading into the big braking zones.
Webster getting very close now to the back of him. And Lupino's going to have to think about defending from pretty much this point on. Further back, there's still a big scrap going on. Piastri's got back by Dylan Shepherd and put himself into 4th place once again. So they continue to battle 2.5 seconds off this battle. Fear race lead. Here we go. The run down at 130R. Is Webster aggressive enough to try one down here? I don't think so, but look out for the chicane. That might be where he lunges. The inside of turn 1, there's plenty of opportunities for Webster. Lupino's got to defend here. Down into the chicane, drove it down the right-hand side. He doesn't do it. Webster shoots up the inside, late on the brakes, and takes the spot away.
Good job from Cooper Webster, maximising the strength of the Audi where it counts and manages to get the job done.
Very surprised Lupino didn't defend. Maybe he thought he could get a good slipstream down this main straight and come back at him at turn 1, but he's just too far back for that to happen. And Webster will lead them down into the first corner with 7 minutes left on the clock. Joe Stewart really holding up Dylan Shepherd and Oscar Piastri now. Shepherd's back by Piastri as well.
And Matt Lupino, having relinquished the race lead to Cooper Webster, is now having to think about defending from Blake Purdy, who's sitting there in position 3 at the moment. So it's all compressing up very nicely at the front of this field. Just over 5 seconds separating the top 7 cars in the race at this stage.
Jackson Harlow's the fastest on the track, doing a 1:59.9 last time by 2 tenths quicker than Webster. As Lupino gets to slow down and has to pull over and let Purdy go by. And that's going to put him under some pressure now from Joe Stewart in just a moment's time. As there's a lunge up the inside from Piastri, forces the issue, gets himself through. Shepherd falls behind him once again. Gives a little bit of breathing room in favour of Stewart and allows Harlow to close up to the back of these guys as well. He's just a few car lengths back now. This is going to be a fantastic scrap for 4th place right down to the end as Piastri moves across to cover off, but he goes too deep and Shepherd's back up his inside. Piastri's out on the AstroTurf. He slots back in just in front of Harlow now. It's 2 Altus Esports cars trying to get by Dylan Shepherd now.
What a fantastic battle this has been between Dylan Shepherd and Oscar Piastri. They've swapped positions on a number of occasions, pretty much ever since the safety car restart, and now it's Jackson Suzel and Harlow who have been looking to try and pass both of them.
Running different highlights on their cars. Oscar Piastri sporting the yellow. He is, of course, a Renault Academy driver. And Jackson Suzel and Harlow sporting the bright green. So both distinguishable by that. I mentioned earlier, Scott running red as Lupino has to pit, so he's not making it on fuel. He's down at the pit lane. That might be why he didn't defend the race lead.
Well, that answers that question, doesn't it? He didn't have the fuel range to get through without making a pit stop, so it's worth taking the gamble, but in the end, not one that paid off.
Certainly. Again, Piastri lurking on the back of Shepherd. And as they do this, Job Stewart is starting to pull away from them. So he's loving this battle as it rages on behind him. And he's got a margin now of about a second back to these guys. And Josh Perlin in the distance, he's starting to close in as well.
Fastest lap of the race has been recorded by our race leader Cooper Webster at 1 minute 59.2. As we see once again Oscar Piastri putting the pressure on Dylan Shepherd, but the back of that Mercedes so wide. And Shepherd just positioning his car exactly where he needs to at the moment to make it very difficult for Oscar Piastri to be able to fire it down the inside. And what this battle is allowing is third place Job Stewart just to extend a bit of breathing space over the battling trio of cars behind him.
Lupino rejoined in 7th place, so he didn't lose much time. No, he didn't. He's scored in 7th. He's scored in 7th place, but he's back in 16th. Time on the screen signal, but it's an update for me. Back onto the main straight. Shepherd closing back towards Job Stewart. So the pressure got relieved just a little bit on Piastri, by Piastri, and Shepherd was able to use that to really attack the corners and start to reel it back in towards Stewart. He was 3/10 quicker than him last time by. Piastri and Harlow the same sort of lap times as Shepherd. So once again, it's heading into a battle for the final step on the podium. Just under 3 minutes left to go, so it should be 2 laps to go in this race.
You can see the drivers just waving left and right as well to try and break the slipstream of the car behind. And again, particularly on a circuit like this one, Suzuka, where you do have quite a lot of high-speed corners and cars like these that are very aero-dependent, when you do start to get close to the car in front, you will notice that your car will be affected by a bit of the turbulent air from the aerodynamics of the car that you're behind.
Look how much they close up through the hairpin. Looking back under the rear wing there from Job Stewart at the 3 raging cars behind him. He's got a Mercedes and then 2 Audis. He's lost even more time on this lap, hasn't he, Lockie? He's not got the pace, but he's been fortunate with how much left battle behind him to have the margin he had for a little while there. But as soon as they stopped, he started to fall backwards. They come down towards the final sector, getting ready to see the white flag.
So will we see any final big sends on this last lap of the race? You get the feeling that something might be brewing in this contest for what will be the final spot on the podium. Job Stewart's done a really good job of resisting the pressure from the cars behind. But as I say that, he just runs a little bit wide, heading down through 130R. Manages to get it back onto the racetrack without giving up too much time to the cars behind. We are into that stage of the race where if you want to get a podium position, it's time to just send it.
Still looking for a decent nomination for the best send of the night too, so maybe somebody can put their hand up with one here in this battle as Piastri closes right up to Shepard. A lot of pace in the mid-corner there. That might put him in a very good spot for potentially a lunge up the inside of this right-hander. He's got the run. Does he have enough speed up his sleeve? He doesn't. He sits in behind, playing the patient game. Watch for the hairpin to be a potential move as he showed the nose, forced a mistake from Shepard, who covered for half a second, and it really compromised him as Piastri pushes him now down towards the hairpin. On the brakes they go. Shepard covers. Piastri round the long way, trying to make it stick out of the corner, door to door, almost making contact. Just enough room between the two of them. As now the inside line for Piastri through the long, sweeping right-hander. Up the hill they go. Still an overlap for Shepard. Back on the inside now for him. They're still door to door.
How good's this? Awesome racing as they fight it out for podium position.
They're both gone, and Susan Harlow sweeps through into third. Slight contact sends them both around at the apex of the second part of this left-hander. They just came into contact, and it unloaded Piastri. Shepard was unsettled, and he went around as well. Up front, Cooper Webster's going to drive to yet another victory and just send it as he gets it done in the Audi here at Suzuka. Purdy across in second, and Stewart will be your final car on the podium.
So that's race victory number 8 for Cooper Webster in the Just Centered series. Just over 5 seconds, the final margin back to Blake Purdy, who notches up his 5th Just Centered podium result. And Job Stewart home also for his 5th podium result in the Just Centered series. And Jackson Suzlin Harlow continues his run of very, very solid race performances, finishing up in 4th position. Such a shame there that Oscar Piastri got tangled up with Dylan Shepard on the final lap, because it was shaping up to be a really good, exciting and clean battle for what would have been the final spot on the podium.
And this battle for 20th place is going to be resolved as Robert Cridsdale will win out ahead of Paul Rogers in 21st. And big shame that battle ended the way it did behind Job Stewart. Harlow will be reasonably pleased with it. Come across in 4th as they take some Pro 2 sort of lines on the final lap of this one. Cooper Webster, he adds another one to his tally here and Just Send It, as we will take a look at your race results for week 9 of the series for season 3 here at Suzuka. Five seconds, the margin between Webster and Purdy in the end. Job Stewart in 3rd. Harlow and Perwin, your top 5. James Golding coming across in 6th. Piastri falls to 7th after the last lap tangle. Mitchell McLeod, Brenton Hobson 8th and 9th. Shepard falling to 10th on the last lap.
Kobe Williams comes home in 11th position ahead of Reece Cohen, back then to Jordan Caruso in 13th. Steve Jansen in 14th position ahead of Scott Fontaine. James Kutia in 16th, then Declan Fraser, Emerson Harvey, Jay Cool and Jonathan Bykoff in 20th position.
See the rest of the results. Scroll by on your screen. 26 cars on the lead lap at the line. A few guys a lap down, the rest retirements after having issues throughout the 40 minutes today. A lot of mistakes out there on the racetrack, Lockie. A combination, I think, of a high speed, high downforce track where mistakes are punished and a hot track temp.
Yep, and in the end it was a driver who made no mistakes who came home for the race victory. Cooper Webster did not put a foot wrong all night, and his reputation as one of the most exciting young talents in the Aussie sim racing scene continues to grow.
So looking forward on SimSpeed TV. If you want to see all our events and see them as we go live, make sure you like us on Facebook at SimSpeed Esports Network. Find us on Instagram as well at SimSpeed TV. Make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube to catch all of our broadcasts on the YouTube channel. And what is coming up is tomorrow night, we have the Australian Turbo Touring Car iRacing Series from Summit Point. On Thursday, the Oceanic Dirt Sim Racing event, 360s, go racing once again. On Saturday, Erebus Motorsport, the racing portion of their junior esports event. live on Saturday at midday here on Just Send It. Make sure you tune in for that. Going to be a fantastic event. But for tonight, from myself, Ryan Jones, and from Lachlan Mansell alongside me, Jake Kennedy behind the scenes, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Sometimes you just got to lick the stamp and send it.
I don't know what happened on there. I just plucked her in first, gave some gentle. Fuck yeah. Sorry.
You are racing with other people. And if you no longer go for a test that exists, you're no longer a racing driver.
We go green for 40 minutes of racing around Monza.
Billy, look at defense by Ethan Grigol, just getting so punchy.
And a brilliant getaway already from Josh Rogers.
Two pro drivers going at it here between Dylan O'Keefe and Nick Foster.
Stanaway's demoted to third. Webster wins week 9 here at Sebring. Through the final corner. That's a huge slide for Cooper Murray. He's just trying to barge their way through, and that's whoa. That's a merry-go-round for Nick Burkett. Campbell, Paolo Gaon, and Ferraris behind. Glenn Wood actually was flipped into the barriers. One of the most exciting pirouettes I've seen in quite some time. That's Van Gisbergen, and his day is done. Tell you what, if Calvin wins this race, I wouldn't be surprised. He's all 4 wheels up the racetrack. Wow, but he just saves it on the apex.
Contact almost made, side by side through the elevation change, and Scotty McLaughlin had the move done, but he got over the crest. And
What a send!
Dylan O'Keefe sends it up the inside, can't do anything with it.
Shane Van Gisbergen already on the attack.
It begins and sending has begun.
And it's going to be a drag race to the line. Tuesday night is rapidly becoming a night to lick the stamp. Send it.
Oh, I forgot I was helping commentate here. I was just sitting back in my jocks and
Yeah. I'm ready to play now. Put me in the game now. I came here to prove it. I'm ready to do it. I can't be afraid now. Put me on the stage now. I'm ready to rage now. I feel like an animal stuck in a cage and I'm ready to break out. My time, my time. None of you people can tell me to stop. This time, like the last time, you better get ready